Welcome back to Drive-In Dishes. I'm Sally. Guess what we're making today? We're going to make macarona bechamel. There's not a single person, I'm sure, out there who has not heard of macarona bechamel and who has not tasted tens of, probably hundreds of different versions of macarona bechamel. Well, I know in my house that there is some serious controversy about the right way to make macarona bechamel. But last year, my brother told me that mine finally beat my mother's recipe. So that was a big deal for me. But you know what? It doesn't make any difference. I'm going to show you the basics of macarona bechamel. And if your mother puts more meat sauce or puts more bechamel sauce or does this little tweak or that little tweak, it doesn't make a difference. It's all good. I'm going to show you the basics. Now, the basics are a little bit tedious. Not difficult, but tedious, because there's 3 steps going on at once. Let's come over here. I'm going to show you what we're doing. All right, here we go. In one bowl, I have made ahead the rigatoni. 1 16-ounce box of rigatoni. I cooked it with a little bit of salt water, and it's ready to go. I drizzled a little bit of olive oil on it just to keep it tender while we're doing everything else. Okay, so that's 1 16-ounce cooked box of rigatoni. This pan here, I've got 1 chopped onion in a little bit of olive oil, and I've sauteed it. We also call it sweating it until the onions are nice and tender, but they're not brown. On top of that, I am going to add 1 pound of lean ground beef. Now you want lean, you don't want it to be too greasy. On the ground beef, I am going to put a teaspoon of salt, half teaspoon of pepper, half teaspoon of allspice to season that meat. And we are going to mix it in there really good. And then we're going to leave that alone. Once we mix it in, the spices and the onions really well, we're going to leave it alone while it browns. So I've got it on somewhat low heat so it can brown evenly. Make sure that we've got all those spices melded in there. Okay, we're going to leave that alone for now. Next pot, I have melted down 3/4 of a cup of unsalted butter. Okay, it's melted down. I've got this on low. I'm going to turn it up slightly. I'm going to add to that 3/4 of a cup of unsalted butter, I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of plain flour. And we're going to make what is called a roux, R-O-U-X. Butter and flour, you mix it up, it's called a roux. That's a French word often used in cooking. We're going to turn that butter down just a little bit because we don't actually want it to boil. But we are going, now this is an important part I want you to learn because making a roux is pretty critical. Making it the right way is pretty critical. So we are going to blend that butter and that flour in really well and get it nice and blended. Mix it up really well, and we're going to let it thicken up a little bit before we add 4 cups of whole milk. Okay? Now again, this is not some place where I would skimp on the milk. I would make it whole, not low fat. You really need a bechamel sauce to be thick and creamy. This is not the place to go low fat. So we are going to thicken up this roux until it gets a little bit thick and almost doughy in the pan. Okay? Again, 3/4 of a cup of unsalted butter, 3/4 of a cup of flour, and stir, stir, stir until it starts to begin to almost come off the pan. You'll see in a minute. Then we'll add the 4 cups of whole milk, but that's when we take it off the heat. I'll show you that in just a minute here. Let's give this a minute. Stir up our beef. So it's a little bit tedious because you've got a few things going on at the same time, but it's manageable. You just got to do this a few times, and then macarona bechamel will be like looking at the back of your hand. So we're browning that. We're going to turn it up just a little bit to brown it. And then we're going to go back to our roux. We want to keep stirring the roux because we do not want the butter to boil. Okay, now you see it's very homogeneous. It's nice and creamy looking. We're going to let that thicken up just a little bit before we add our milk. And see, this is what's going to make our bechamel sauce nice and thick. Okay, so our roux is thickening up now. We're going to take it off the heat temporarily and slowly add our milk. I'm going to add a little bit at a time and stir. Because I want the sauce to be nice and creamy with no lumps in it. Once we've got our milk added, we're going to bring it back to the heat. Not too high of a heat. We're going to keep stirring. Stirring, 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 because we want it to thicken it up, but what we don't want is for the milk to scald or for this to get lumpy again. We want it nice and creamy. And give that a minute and stir the meat up. We just want it browned. We don't want it black. In a minute, as soon as this is browned, we are going to add 1.5 cups of tomato sauce to it. The tomato sauce can be plain old tomato sauce, or you can get like spaghetti sauce, pasta sauce, whatever you want. I just usually use like a tomato spaghetti sauce, just a plain old tomato basil spaghetti sauce. So we are going to be right back. When this thickens up, I'm going to show you what consistency we want it, and I'll show you the next steps of the macarona bechamel. We are back here with our macarona bechamel. We've stirred this constantly for about 2-3 minutes on medium-high heat, and now we're getting to the point where it's getting a lot thicker. And so in about 30 seconds here, I'm going to take it off the stove, and when we take it off the stove, it's going to thicken up a little bit more. So you don't want it to get too thickened up on the stove. See, it's pretty thick the way it is. Okay, and so we're going to take it off the stove now. By the way, in the meantime, I added the sauce, the tomato sauce, to the meat mixture, and it's just on low right now, just simmering on low so the meat soaks up that nice tomato flavor. And, yep, the bechamel is ready to come off, because as you see, it got thick really quick. See, so we don't want to leave it there too much longer. Okay, now that we've taken it off, we're going to let it cool a little bit, but what we're going to do is we're going to add a teaspoon of salt and 1/2 teaspoon of white pepper. And the reason for the white pepper is because it doesn't discolor that pretty color of the bechamel sauce like the black pepper would. So this is white pepper and salt, and you see it really got quite thick once I took it off the stove. Also, what we're going to do while that's cooling off, we want to add 1/2 cup of this to the pasta. Okay, so we're going to get that pasta soaking up that nice bechamel sauce. And then we're going to let the bechamel sauce cool. We're going to mix up the pasta with the bechamel. Get the bechamel around all that pasta. Looks delicious already, doesn't it? And we haven't even gotten it into the pan yet. By the way, while we're doing this, make sure you've got a casserole pan ready to go. And you might as well go and get your oven preheated to 350 now. All right, we're going to let that cool. We're going to let this cool, and we're going to be right back because we're going to add some eggs. What you need to have ready is 3 beaten eggs for the bechamel, and then 1 beaten egg for the pasta. Also have ready 3/4 of a cup of grated Parmesan or grated Romano. And I'm going to be right back. As soon as that bechamel sauce cools, we're going to add the eggs to it, and then we're ready to put all this in the oven, okay? Be right back. All right, we're back. We're going to do the bechamel sauce. We're going to finish it up. So we've let the bechamel sauce cool, and we're going to add our 3 beaten eggs to it. But quickly, because we don't want those eggs to get cooked, we're going to stir, 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 stir. We don't want scrambled eggs with our bechamel sauce. Stir, 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 stir. Stir, stir, stir. Okay. Now, next thing we're going to do to this bechamel, we're going to add a 1/2 cup of grated Parmesan or grated Romano. It's up to you. We're going to save about 1/4 of a cup for the pasta. I'm going to get that in blend it in real well. And you can imagine that this is already starting to smell great, and it's going to taste wonderful. Okay. Going to try to get those lumps out. Okay, let's move on to our pasta. Okay, we're going to add 1 beaten egg to the pasta. And then we're going to add the rest of our Parmesan. And we're going to stir that up. Get that real blended in real well. We're almost to the finish point. This is a great dish to make for, big family gatherings because you're going to have so much food, and it's perfect for feast days, Christmas and Easter, when everybody's ready for some meat and some rich foods. This is perfect. All right, you ready? We've got all 3 things ready. We've got our sauce that's been simmering on low heat. We've got our pasta all blended up, and we've got our bechamel sauce all blended up. So this is what we're going to do. Whoops. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to take our casserole dish, and we are going to take a little pat of butter and grease up that casserole dish. Got a little tablespoon of butter here. We're going to use it to grease up our casserole dish. Grease that up really good. I like this dish because it's ceramic, but you can use whatever you want. Ceramic just cooks keeps the heat real even. All right, so we've greased up that dish. We're going to layer half the pasta. And now what we want to do is we don't want to create big piles of pasta. So what we're going to do is we'll put half of it in our casserole dish and spread it out really evenly so that it's not in big piles, but that there's it's 1 layer high in the dish. And it'll just take you a couple of minutes here to spread it out, and so that it covers the bottom of the dish pretty evenly. It's not all piled up on top of each other. This just takes a little bit more time, but it works out better this way if you take the time to spread it out. I'm going to put a little bit more so that we cover the bottom of this pan. All right. Okay, next step, we're going to put all of that meat sauce on it. And again, we want that to lay evenly on our first layer of pasta, that first half of pasta. And this smells wonderful. I can tell you that it smells just great. It's going to smell even better when it's all cooked up. All right, we're going to take our second half of pasta. And again, we want to spread it all over evenly. And we want it, again, in one layer. We don't want big piles of it. So we're going to just take the time to spread it out. You can use whatever pasta you like. I mean, obviously this is not that easy to do with spaghetti, but like a rigatoni is fine. You know, Greeks use these long tubes of pasta too. They all work fine. You know, you really want something that's kind of cylindrical so that it soaks up that bechamel sauce when it's in the oven, so that the bechamel actually gets between the tubes. That's really when it's delicious, when you bite into it and the bechamel is just oozing out. All right, here we go, fun part. We're going to put the bechamel sauce on top. Yum. You know, this is also called pastitsio in Greek. Very, very similar to Greek pastitsio. So if your friends have never heard of macarena bechamel, you can just say, oh, it's like pastitsio. We have a lot of similarities between Greek food and Egyptian food, but I like to say we came up with it first. You want to spread out that bechamel sauce evenly. All right. Final step, about 1/2 cup of breadcrumbs, just to cover that evenly. And then we're going to put it in that 350-degree oven that you've preheated. And I'll be right back and show you what it looks like when we get out of the oven. And I'll be right back to show you what it looks like when it comes out of the oven, okay? It's about 35 to 40 minutes. When you start to see it all golden and bubbly on the top, take it out. Be right back. All right, we're back. Our macarona bechamel has been cooking for baking for about 35 to 40 minutes. You see it's nice and golden on the top. Let me show you. Ah, beautiful. That looks lovely. All right, it's nice and crispy golden on top. That's when you take it out. We're not going to cut it right now because we need to let it cool off so it gets firmed up a little bit. But this is going to be a wonderful meal tonight. I hope it works out for you. Bilhana wa shifa. We'll see you next time.